Welcome to the Token Trails podcast and our Superchain Explainer series. Today we're diving into the World Chain white paper,
Exploring its vision
innovations,
and
and
role in the Superchain ecosystem.
stay tuned for insights that connect the dots in Web3.
Yeah, we're about to explore some fascinating tech with huge implications for digital identity.
For sure, this white paper really dives deep into proof of human, or PLA. How can we be absolutely sure that someone online is actually a real person?
Yeah,
Seems simple,
right.
but digitally it's a huge challenge.
It really is, and solving POH is crucial for so much we want to do online,
Yeah.
ensuring fairness and things like token distribution or online voting, creating systems we can trust for reputation, or even distributing something like a universal basic income.
Like UBI.
Yeah, UBI, where everyone receives a set amount of money.
Right.
All these ideas rely on knowing without a doubt that we're dealing with real, unique humans.
Makes sense because without a reliable system, you're just asking to be taken advantage of. The white paper actually calls this a Sybil attack, where someone could create a ton of fake identities to rig the system,
Oh, yeah.
like casting a bunch of votes or grabbing multiple shares of a token airdrop.
Right. And the paper digs into why current solutions aren't cutting it.
Oh.
Things like social graphs where you vouch for your friends.
Right.
They don't scale well globally.
Mm.
Then there are centralized identity platforms, but those bring up concerns about privacy and control.
So what's World Chain's big idea to solve this?
They're tackling this challenge from two sides with a custom hardware device called the Orb
Okay.
and a clever digital identity protocol called World ID.
The Orb, this isn't your average iris scanner, is it?
It's not.
I was struck by the design philosophy behind it.
Yes, they put a lot of thought into this.
Yeah.
The Orb is built for iris biometrics,
Okay.
capturing incredibly detailed pictures of your iris to prove you're human and that you're one of a kind.
Wow.
But they went beyond just the tech. They wanted the design to symbolize their vision. It's a sphere representing the Earth and tilted at 23.5 degrees, just like our planet's axis.
Oh, wow.
It's a small touch, but I think it speaks volumes about their goal of worldwide inclusion.
Yeah. And why go through the trouble of custom hardware? Why not just use a phone camera?
It all comes down to security.
Okay.
Imagine trying to make this work in environments you can't fully trust. You need to stop someone from faking an iris scan
Right.
and make sure the data is handled in a way that protects people's privacy.
Yeah.
That's not an easy feat for your typical smartphone.
Right.
The Orb is designed with tamper detection, secure firmware, and more. They're serious about keeping the system safe.
It makes sense if you're going to create a global ID system.
Yeah.
It needs to be rock solid, right?
Exactly. And World ID comes into play to ensure privacy while using the super secure device.
Oh.
It uses zero-knowledge proofs.
Or ZKPs.
Or ZKPs.
ZKPs are a key part of protecting privacy, according to the white paper. But to be honest, they always sound a bit like magic to me.
Haha. I get that.
Like, how does that even work?
Think of it this way.
Okay.
Imagine you have a secret code, and you want to prove you know it without actually revealing the code itself. That's what ZKPs allow you to do. In this case, you can prove you're human and have a World ID without sharing personal details.
Okay, that makes it much clearer.
Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah, it is. And these ZKPs are how they fight those Sybil attacks we were talking about.
Precisely. Because even though you can prove you have a World ID, you can't create multiple fake identities that link back to you.
Got it.
One person, one identity.
This all sounds really fascinating.
It is.
What can you tell us about the iris scanning and ZKPs that make it all tick?
Well, iris recognition is incredibly accurate, even at a scale of billions of people.
Really?
The Orb captures way more detail than a typical iris scanner.
Wow.
And they're even exploring advanced AI and deep learning to make it even more accurate and inclusive.
So they're really pushing the boundaries here.
They are.
Now we've got this unique hardware in the Orb and this powerful cryptographic protocol in World ID.
Right.
What's the bigger picture? Where does all this lead?
If we connect this to the bigger picture,
Yeah.
World Chain is aiming to create a global economy that's more accessible and fair. Imagine a world where everyone has a digital identity that is secure and private.
That's a big vision.
It is.
That opens up a lot of possibilities. We're talking secure online voting, efficient UBI distribution, stopping fraud.
Yeah.
It's pretty mind-boggling.
It is, and they're committed to decentralization and community governance.
Oh, wow.
They're building a foundation, not a walled garden, for a more inclusive internet.
It's an exciting vision.
Very excited.
But before we get ahead of ourselves,
Right?
we need to talk about the WLD token.
Yes. No deep dive into World Chain would be complete without understanding its role in the ecosystem.
Right. Let's talk tokens.
Let's do it.
So the WLD token, according to the white paper, is what powers the World Chain network.
Yeah.
It's how they encourage people to participate and help the whole system grow.
Exactly.
And that initial token distribution is particularly interesting.
It is.
They've set aside a whopping 75% for the world community.
That's huge.
It's a clear message about their commitment to sharing power and ownership.
Absolutely.
But how do those tokens actually get into the hands of the community?
They outline a few key ways.
Okay.
Firstly, they are offering grants to users who verify their identity with an orb, a direct reward for participating.
And if I remember correctly, the orb isn't available to just buy.
That's right.
They're using a network of orb operators to distribute them.
That's right. And those orb operators also get WLD tokens for verifying users.
So they're building an entire ecosystem designed to encourage the network to grow.
Exactly.
Clever way to bootstrap the network, get those orbs out there, and give people reason to run them.
Yeah.
There are also some more complex elements to the token distribution.
There are.
They've allocated portions to the development team investors and an ecosystem fund. They're balancing the needs of various stakeholders.
They are.
And they're completely transparent about all of this in the white paper.
Yeah.
They break down the percentages, explain why each allocation exists, and even address potential concerns about the concentration of ownership.
It's all right there in the white paper.
They also discuss the token's role in governance.
Yeah.
The plan is that eventually the community will have a say in how the network evolves.
That's the goal.
This is a long-term game.
It is.
They're working towards a decentralized future for World Chain.
Absolutely.
But let's not get too far ahead.
Okay.
The white paper lays out a clear roadmap of how they plan to reach those goals,
It does.
which includes some really exciting plans.
Oh, yeah.
They discuss refining the tech, adding new features for World ID, expanding that network of orb operators, and finally transitioning to a more decentralized system of governance.
Big plans.
It's a fascinating mix of ambition and a realistic step-by-step approach.
I agree.
And they're very upfront about the challenges.
Which is exactly what we'll be discussing in part 2 of this deep dive.
See you back here soon for part 2. Welcome back to our deep dive into the World Chain white paper.
Last time we covered a lot of ground, from the need for a solid proof of human system to the inner workings of iris biometrics and zero-knowledge proofs.
But like with any big project, there are always challenges and potential downsides to consider.
And the white paper doesn't shy away from that.
Right.
It actually dedicates a good chunk to discussing the risks and challenges.
Which I think is a good sign.
Yeah.
It shows they're being transparent and realistic, which is key for building trust, especially with something as sensitive as global digital identity.
Absolutely. It's refreshing to see that level of self-awareness.
So let's get into the specifics. What are some of the biggest risks and challenges they highlight?
One of the major ones is security.
Okay.
Even with all the safeguards built into the Orb and World ID, no system is completely foolproof.
Right.
The white paper acknowledges the possibility of attacks both on the hardware and the software.
They even bring up the possibility of someone compromising or spoofing an orb.
Yes, and they've thought about ways to mitigate that risk.
Okay.
The system is designed so that any World ID created by a compromised orb can be revoked. They also have a bug bounty program and are constantly working to improve security.
They also talk about how decentralization can boost security.
Right.
By spreading control across a wider network. It makes it much harder for a single point of failure to take the whole system down.
That's a crucial point, and it ties into another challenge.
What's that?
Scalability.
Okay.
They have this ambitious goal of reaching billions of users.
Yeah, billions.
But scaling a system like this globally is no small feat.
Just imagine the logistics of manufacturing and distributing enough orbs to meet that demand.
It's a lot.
And then there's the challenge of keeping the World ID protocol running smoothly and securely as the network grows.
It's a massive undertaking.
Yeah.
And while the white paper outlines their plan to address it, scalability is definitely a hurdle.
Then there's the issue of privacy, which is obviously paramount when we're talking about biometric data.
Of course.
The white paper stresses their commitment to using zero-knowledge proofs to protect user privacy.
Yeah.
But some critics have raised concerns about how that data is actually stored and managed.
That's a valid point.
Yeah.
Even with anonymized data, there are still questions about who has access to it, how it's secured, and what happens if there's a breach.
And of course, we can't ignore the potential for misuse.
Right.
Any technology this powerful can be used for good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
The white paper recognizes the need for safeguards to prevent World ID from being used for things like surveillance or discrimination.
These are crucial conversations to have.
Yeah.
We need to think deeply about the ethical implications and ensure responsible use of this technology.
Which leads us to a big question that often comes up.
Okay.
Could this technology be used in ways that limit individual freedom and autonomy?
That's where things get really complex. There's the potential for this system to empower individuals and create a more inclusive world, but there's also the potential for it to be used for control, surveillance, and exclusion.
Some people are worried that a system like this could lead to a world where your access to basic services and opportunities depends on having a World ID.
Right.
And following certain rules or behaviors.
It's a valid concern, and we need to be very mindful of it as this technology develops.
Yeah.
Open and honest conversations about the risks are essential.
For sure.
And we must put safeguards in place to prevent abuse.
The white paper talks about the importance of community governance as a way to address these concerns.
Yeah.
The idea is that the World ID holders themselves would have a say in how the system is used and governed.
That's a step in the right direction.
Okay.
The governance is an ongoing process.
Right.
It requires constant vigilance and participation to make sure power stays distributed and the system serves its users.
It's a balancing act.
It is.
And it's going to take a lot of thoughtful discussion and collaboration to get it right.
Absolutely. And it goes beyond the technology itself.
In what way?
We need to consider the social and political context in which it's used.
Okay.
Who benefits from this technology?
Right.
Who might be left out?
Yeah.
How could it shift power dynamics in society?
Those are big questions.
They are.
And they lead us to another important aspect of this deep dive.
The WLD token.
Okay, back to the token.
It's not just about fueling the network. It's about how value is created and shared within this ecosystem.
Right.
And that raises some interesting questions about fairness and equity.
Welcome back to the final part of our World Chain deep dive.
We've explored the vision, the tech, the potential, the challenges, and now it's time to grapple with the economics.
Because in the world of Web3, the token is often at the heart of it all.
And the WLD token is designed to play a key role in the World Chain ecosystem in several ways.
The white paper describes it as the fuel for the network, but it seems to go beyond just that.
Exactly. It's also a tool for governance, a mechanism for value distribution, and potentially even a driver of adoption.
Okay, let's unpack that. We talked before about that initial token allocation, 75% for the world community.
A bold move that underscores their commitment to a more equitable distribution of ownership.
But what does that actually mean in practical terms? What can someone actually do with WLD tokens?
That's the big question, and the white paper provides some insights.
They mentioned using WLD tokens to incentivize orb operators, which seems logical.
It makes perfect sense. You need to reward the people who are running these devices, verifying users, and essentially keeping the system running.
And they've hinted at the possibility of using WLD tokens to fund grants for projects built on WorldChain.
Which could spark a whole ecosystem of innovation and development around this technology.
But here's where it gets really interesting. They're also exploring the use of WLD tokens for what they call proof of personhood applications.
Think of it as a way to unlock benefits or access based on your verified human status.
So imagine a world where you could use your World ID and WLD tokens to vote in online elections, join specific online communities, or even claim your share of a universal basic income program.
The possibilities are vast and quite exciting.
But it also raises some important questions.
Absolutely. How do we ensure fairness in how those benefits are distributed? How do we prevent manipulation or abuse?
And how do we balance the needs of all the different players, users, developers, investors, the wider community?
These are complex issues, and the white paper acknowledges there's still much to figure out.
They highlight the importance of community governance as a way to shape the future of the WLD token and its role in the ecosystem.
Which is encouraging. It shows they understand that this is about building a community, a movement, not just a piece of technology.
And they're inviting everyone to be a part of that process.
Whether you're a developer, an entrepreneur, an activist, or simply someone curious about the future of digital identity.
The WorldChain white paper is a call to action, a challenge to think differently about our online identities, our connections, and how we build a more equitable and inclusive digital world.
It's a conversation worth having, and we encourage you to dive into the white paper yourself, explore the ideas, consider the challenges, and join the discussion.
Because the future of digital identity is being shaped right now, And we all have a role to play in deciding what that future looks like.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the World Chain white paper.
We'll see you next time on the Coke and Trails podcast.